and welcome to the Amplifying Scientific Innovation podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Sophia Onoye, founder and CEO of the Sophia Consulting Firm, a life science marketing and communications consultancy that was established in New York City with the goal of amplifying scientific innovation. The goal of this podcast is to showcase innovations stemming from global life science companies through conversations with industry senior leaders who share their perspectives on their unique leadership journey, corporate vision, and industry outlook. My guest today is Mr. Stephen Morris, founder and partner, CEO, president, and board member of BioLife 4D, a regenerative medicine company that is driving a movement to transform the treatment of heart disease, which is the leading cause of death worldwide. In fact, by leveraging its advances in life sciences and cardiac tissue engineering to build human hearts that are suitable for implantation, BioLife 4D is committed to optimizing the process and technology around viable human organ transplants and making it a safe, accessible, commercially viable, and cost-effective reality. Stephen has more than 20 years of extensive experience in the precision machining and manufacturing industries, including 15 years serving as president of privately held Inland Midwest Corporation, IMC, which merged with MedTorque, Inc. In fact, after several years of high profitability, Stephen negotiated a successful exit strategy and sold the company in 2011. And he remained on as president for 2 years following the sale. But that's not enough. Stephen's key strengths include building and optimizing state-of-the-art innovative processes, putting together best-in-class teams, and having a keen sense of strategic vision. Stephen went to college at Tulane University as an undergraduate and then continued his studies at the University of Texas, Austin, where he studied business. I had the pleasure of connecting with Stephen through LinkedIn and based on mutual contacts. But what was fascinating for me about BioLife 4D is actually a personal one. My mother had her mitral valve replaced about 2 years ago. And the fact of the matter is that she, like many people today, are dealing with different types of cardiovascular diseases. And I'm always curious to know about how future technologies or emerging technologies such as 3D bioprinting could help us to go a very positive step in the right direction. I'm blown away by the innovation of this company, and I am incredibly excited today to speak with you, Steve. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to talk about our pretty incredible technology. Heart disease or cardiovascular disease, which is what we're setting out to try and arrest. You're not alone. It takes the life of 1 out of every 3 people in every developed country in the world. It's by far the leading cause of death in every country in the world, more than every type of cancer combined. It's a terrible problem, and the technology we're working on hopefully will put a dent in that.
Wonderful, and I can't wait for us to get into that, but I had to take one step backwards because I cannot start this podcast without asking you probably my favorite question. What is your definition of scientific innovation?
Oh, scientific innovation. Well, scientific innovation really is just making changes that will advance science forward, I think. You could really do that in a couple of different ways. The first is advancing existing technology, improving on it, or making new applications for it. I think the other way for scientific innovation to take place is through making brand new discoveries. And at BioLife 4D, my company, we do a whole lot of both of them.
Right, right. That's incredible. I completely agree with you. It's not just one thing, it's a multi-dimensional thing. That's really what innovation is. And I might know the answer to this, but then you've achieved so many, so I don't know which one you're going to pick. I've been told this particular question is like asking to pick your favorite child, but I'm going to ask you the question anyway. So, what do you think is your most impactful professional achievement to date?
To date, well, I would have to say probably the formation of BioLife 4D. It's very different.
Mm,
The company is very different than anything I've been involved with or most other people have been involved with. Typically, you would form a company around a very a thought leader, a leading scientist, a doctor, something like that, and someone who's really good at what they do and form a company around them. My approach to this challenge, the technology that we're working on, was to put together all of the different thought leaders and all of the different steps of the process that it takes in order to accomplish what we're trying to do. So, for instance, in our technology, there's different scientific and other types of philosophies that are all integral to it. You have
mm,
biomaterials, you have
mm-hmm,
computing technology, you have software technology, you have bioprinting technology, you have the life sciences. And
mm-hmm.
as a result, what I did was I went out and found thought leaders and leading researchers in all of those different areas of expertise and put them together to form BioLife 4D. Was not
Hmm.
easy, but
Hmm.
got it done.
Well, that's the beauty of it, persistence and being resilient and having that strategic vision to keep pressing forward. Now, I'm curious to know, just if we take a few steps backwards, what attracted you to 3D bioprinting and what is the meaning behind the name BioLife 4D?
So let me answer the second question first. The meaning of
Okay.
BioLife 4D. So BioLife, you have bio for biology and life
Mm-hmm.
for what it is we're trying to save. And initially, we were thinking about naming it BioLife 3D, and 3D
Hmm.
because we were doing a three-dimensional bio printing. And
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, we decided on 4D because it has two different play. The first one is uh, Einstein says that time is the fourth dimension, and time is an integral
Ah.
part of our process. So that's one of it. But really, time is what we're trying to provide people. We're trying to give people the gift of time, give people hope that otherwise have no hope. And so we thought that would be a powerful message embedded in our name.
That's
So,
wonderful. And what attracted you to 3D bioprinting? Was there a
yeah.
life event? Like, what was it?
So it's actually a funny story. After I had a really nice exit event from my last company, I was under a
Mhm.
non-compete and wanted to stay in the medical area. And so I went back to some of my old customers and said, I want to do rapid prototyping for you using 3D printing. Instead of it taking
Ah.
4 to 5 months to do prototypes, it would take maybe 10 days. And they were really
Mm,
excited about it and said, if you do that, we'll take all the capacity in your plant. So I knew it would be a really profitable business, but I also knew a lot about 3D printing, but I wasn't an expert. So I knew I had to go out and
mm,
learn as much as I can about 3D printing for medical industry. And literally by accident, I kept coming across articles that were talking about 3D bioprinting for the medical industry.
mm,
And I would read them and I kept thinking to myself, wow, this is incredible, but no way, it's science fiction. It's
mm.
maybe I get it, but maybe it's 100 years away or something like that. And just by accident, I kept coming across more and more articles and papers and things like that about 3D bioprinting. And so really I turned my focus to 3D bioprinting and said, you know what, I know the world has this huge need to address in cardiovascular disease and 3D bioprinting, it's looking to me like it may be actually a reality. So what I did
Hmm.
was I went out and I learned everything I could about 3D bioprinting and who are the leaders in it. And I literally went out to all those different people and said, you tell me, where are we at with this? And everyone said the same thing. They said, we're literally at the precipice. We're finally at a point in human history where the technology has advanced, the software technology, the hardware technology, all the different things that need to feed into this process to make it work, we're there. And need to just take those pieces, put them together in order to come up with this process. And once I was convinced that this wasn't science fiction, it was science fact, I said, you know what, this is something that I've got to do. It clearly is a significantly more risky of a business plan to do what we're doing now versus what I was originally contemplating doing. But the payoff is significantly greater. We want to put our heads down on our pillows at night, knowing that we took part in literally saving millions of people's lives every year. So once I knew it was a reality, I knew that's what we had to do.
That's wonderful. And it's funny how everything comes together in hindsight. You look at it, and serendipity is probably one of those things where, hey, I was gonna do this and then I found out about this and look at us now, So that's great.
That's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened.
So you actually answered my next question about why the human heart was chosen. I think that it makes sense to think about cardiovascular disease as the leading cause of mortality worldwide. I can't think about a better reason to actually start a business than that.
Yeah, so there's actually two main reasons why we chose to work on the heart for cardiovascular disease. The first one is, as I mentioned previously, and as I think almost everybody understands, that cardiovascular disease is the leading cause of death. When I first was researching this, I went and saw that there were only 3,500 people on a heart transplant waiting list in the United States, but there's 60,000 or 80,000 for kidneys or livers or other things. And so I thought, well, maybe they aren't in such a big need. But the reality is that there's so few heart transplants that take place, they have to ration the donor hearts that become available for the people that have the best chances of success. So the most amount of heart transplants we've ever been able to do in the United States in any year is 3,500. So they limit the list to about 3,500. And if you have diabetes, if you're too old, if you have other medical conditions or comorbidity type of conditions, you may not even be allowed on the list. Right now, there's about 200,000 people just in the United States with late stage heart failure, whose life could potentially be saved by a donor heart transplant, but they're not even allowed on the list. There's only 3,500 people on the list. Outside of the United States, only 1,500 heart transplants take place globally in every other country combined. So if you think about it, that's 5,000 heart transplants that take place globally every year. That's it. And 1 out of 3 people die of cardiovascular disease. If you think about it, there's over 6 billion people alive on the earth. Approximately 1 of 3 of them are going to die of cardiovascular disease, and only 5,000 people's lives are saved every year with life-saving heart transplants. So the need was just huge. So that was one of the reasons that we did it. The other reason was more of a business type of a reason, and that is, unlike if we worked on a kidney or a liver or a different organ, really until we have that whole organ, you don't really have anything. The heart's different though. Heart's made up of valves, like you had talked about, the valve replacement, grafts, other types of things like that. And those components are opportunities for us on our way to our full heart viable for transplantation, in order to get technology out, push technology out to the market. So improving people's lives, and also from a business standpoint, it's more shots on goal, if you will, than just a full heart. So we have multiple different opportunities to improve people's quality of life, and multiple opportunities for business success on our way to our full heart viable for transplantation before we even get there. So it was really a decision based on both of those factors.
Wow. Again, those are very valid factors for going into a business. So with that context in mind, what is your vision for BioLife 4D? And thinking about regenerative medicine as a field at large, but what do you think the next 10, 20 years might bring for us?
Well, that's a great question. So let me talk about what our process is. Our process is literally bioengineering a human heart viable for transplantation using a patient's own cells. So even the people that are lucky enough to get heart transplants right now. So for instance, our chief medical officer is a heart transplant surgeon, and he
Hmm.
tells his patients, the good news is we're going to be able to save your life. The bad news is in reality, we're just trading one disease for another. See, in
Hmm.
order to
Hmm.
prevent the body from rejecting the organ, the recipient, the patient, has to take massive amounts of immunosuppressant therapy to shut down their immune system so that their immune system doesn't reject the donor organ, the donor heart in this case. And that presents all sorts of challenges for people. It shuts down your entire immune system, so you're now susceptible to other diseases and cancers and things like that that a normal immune system would take care of. They're now more vulnerable to those type of things. So the average heart that gets transplanted only lasts about 10 years. So it's not a really
Hmm.
long-term thing in every case. Our technology is taking patients' blood. We take out the white blood cells and we use those white blood cells, we convert them through our different steps in our process to the different building blocks that make up the heart. So when we bioengineer this heart, not only through the act of bioengineering it are we addressing the supply challenge, but because it's made out of the patient's own cells, you don't have
Hmm.
that rejection. So you're able to, the transplant surgeon is able to implant that back to the recipient, to the patient, and not have to undergo all of that massive amount of immunosuppressant therapy. So therefore, we're not only saving their life, but then giving them a good quality of life moving forward. That is a
Hmm.
patient-specific type of technology that we're working on in the field. As we move on, once we're able to do our full heart viable for transplant, we'll look to leverage this technology to other organs, kidneys, livers, other things like that. It's not as simple as just changing the program in a
Yeah.
bioprinter and then all of a sudden you'll now have a kidney or a liver, but we'll have the steps of the process and need to change heart cells for liver cells and things like that. But we'll look to leverage that going forward. The whole field of regenerative medicine going forward is just taking off like crazy. And I think
Yeah.
probably over the next 10 years, we're going to see some really incredible, amazing things that are coming out of that field and addressing a lot of the major health issues that we find ourselves in now.
That is wonderful. And if I read in between the lines, I think that you see a lot of innovation, continued growth in the biotech industry at large in the next, decade or so. But along those same lines, what are some loopholes? What are some missing gaps that we might have in the biotech industry?
Well, there, particularly as computing technology and things like that have evolved, you're getting some really sophisticated stuff going on with in biotech and the whole field in general. I would say that really it's just a matter of people deciding what they want to focus on, staying
Hmm.
focused, and having the sufficient funding and wherewithal to see it through. We're unlocking all of the secrets of Mother Nature and things like that as we move forward. I don't want to oversimplify it. What we're doing has
Right.
never been able to be done by anyone in humanity ever. It's difficult things, but at the end of the day, particularly like what we're doing, we're just trying to recreate the natural biologic process in vitro outside of the body. We're literally just tricking the cells to believe that they're inside the body and then having them do
Hmm.
the things that they do normally. So
Hmm.
when you're doing it that way, you have a shorter path towards being able to reach your goals. If you're trying to completely reproduce everything that Mother Nature is doing, or if you're trying to do something like that, it could be a whole nother story.
Yeah, very well said, Stephen. I would agree with you for the most part. My next question for you is related to COVID-19. They say hindsight is always what, 2020, right? But, retrospectively speaking, what could we have done differently as an industry to help mitigate the impact of COVID-19?
Differently, well, I got to tell you, I truly believe that the biotech in particular industry has just been absolutely phenomenal relating to
Mm.
COVID-19. The things that normally take years and years have been condensed down to literally weeks or months. And so from that standpoint, I think people have been doing just an incredible job. Also, from the standpoint of being able to gather data and information
Mhm.
and analyzing data and providing it to those people that are making decisions for us all, public health decisions, I think people have been doing an incredible job. What is done with that information, with the people that control our policies and things like that, is another discussion. Um, but
Right,
but
right.
but the fact that they have these tools that the whole world scientific community has come together and pushed everything forward, therapies and vaccines, potential therapies, potential vaccines, they're being developed literally in weeks and months instead of years and
Mhm.
years. So I think that the scientific community is really just has done an incredible job relating to COVID-19.
That's great. I mean, I hear from you rapid innovation being something that's come out of COVID-19, collaboration, and also perhaps an increased focus on vaccines. I think that that's what me personally, I would say I've learned from COVID as
Sure.
well. But, this is always a tricky question because oftentimes when I ask it, most people come back and they tell me about their companies. So feel free to answer it how you feel fit. But is there any technology or company that you're currently excited about and why?
I got to tell you, my excitement is, BioLife 4D. I mean, what could be greater than literally bioengineering a human organ for transplant and literally being on the precipice of saving millions of people's lives? There's a lot of really great stuff that's happening in biotech. My wife's a type 1 diabetic, and don't think there's
Mm.
one day that goes by that she doesn't complain that I'm working on a heart instead of a pancreas so that I can cure her type 1 diabetes. I keep my finger on the pulse of things like that, and there's just incredible
Yeah.
advancements that are coming out. So there's a lot of really exciting stuff that's going to come out and really be helpful to lots and lots of people that I'm excited about. But I'd say most excited definitely about BioLife 4D.
That's the right approach. Thank you. So my second to last question for you, it's a bit more philosophical, but what do you think are some key consideration factors that will be important for sustaining innovation in the life science industry?
Well, kind of touched on that before. I think really the major thing is funding. You know,
Mm-hmm.
everyone is looking for funding. There's a lot
Mm-hmm.
more funding that has become available because of COVID-19. There's delays in other type of funding that have happened as a
Yeah.
result of COVID-19. So I think you've got the technology is now advanced, as I keep saying, to a point where there's a lot of really good things that can happen. People have to decide that that's what they want to focus on. They have to be supported by the funding in order to do it. They just have to stay committed and dedicated, and I think that's really it.
Wonderful. The beauty of this podcast is the continuity in the responses because we start out with innovation and we end with a practical look at innovation. You cannot sustain innovation without the funding.
Right.
And that's the absolute truth. So thank you for the practicality in the responses. I appreciate that. And so my final question is fairly simple. The floor is yours to share any thoughts, opinions, just any commentary, just open floor for you.
Okay. Well, listen, I would say for people that are interested, just hang in there. 'Cause we are completely dedicated and focused on getting this technology out to the market in the very shortest period of time possible. We continue to make incredible advancements all the time in the lab. And there are so many different applications to what we're doing to be able to improve the life and literally save the lives of millions of people every year. So people just need to kind of hang in there and just see what's coming.
Wonderful. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today, Stephen. I think that what you're doing, as I mentioned from the start, is one that as a professional within the industry, I appreciate the science, but also as a human being, I appreciate the impact that 3D bioprinting of hearts and other organs and tissues might have on our lives, not just here in the US, but worldwide. So thank you for sharing that perspective with us
Well,
today.
thank you for giving me the opportunity to share it with you. I appreciate it. Had fun. Thank you.